Do you know why we use different HTTP methods like get, post, put, patch, and delete? And how do we pass values like user slash 123 or question mark limit equals to 10 into our API endpoints? In this video, we will cover two fundamental FastAPI concepts, HTTP methods and FastAPI parameters with real life examples and code. Hello all, welcome back to the FastAPI series. In the last video, we built our very first FastAPI app, created an endpoint, and tested it in Swagger Docs as well. And as I said, today's video will focus on HTTP methods and parameters in FastAPI. This will be a bit of a longer video, so let's dive right in. First of all, what are HTTP methods? HTTP methods define the action that a client wants to perform on a resource. And a resource can be anything, could be anything like data in a database, a file, or even just an object. And the most common HTTP methods are get, which is used for retrieval of data, post, which is used for creating new data, put, for replacing the entire data or existing data, and paths, which is used to update a part of the data, and delete is used for removing the data. So if I want to give an example, suppose if we have a table named user. Okay, we have a table named user and you want to get details of a specific user, then you will use the get method. And if a new user registers to our system, then what we need to do, we need to put the data of that user into our database. Then for that we will need post method. And if we want to replace all existing data like the name, email, phone number, etc. of a user, then we will need put request, put method. And if we just want to update one field, like if user updates its password, if a user changes its password, then we will need patch request at that time. If we just want to update one, two, or few fields of data, then we use patch request. When we um, when a user deletes his or her user account, then we will need delete method. So I think this is a bit clear now. Get is for retrieval, post for creating, put for replacing entire, patch for updating, and deleting for removing the whole resource. And there are some less common http methods as well, like head, options, trace, and connect. These are less common but yet very important methods. If you have heard about cars, in that case we will need options method. It is passed as options request, and we will discuss other when we implement it in our project. I came to know about the term idempotency, and it is an important concept here. It means if you repeat the same request multiple times, does it change the result? Okay, get the request like get, put, delete are usually idempotent. Repeating them does not mesh of data, but post request usually creates duplicates if repeated. Like if there is a post request which creates a user resource into our database, then in that case, if we repeat that post request again and again, multiple rows of the user data will be inserted in our database. So post is not idempotent. Alright, now that we understand what HTTP methods are and when to use each of them, let's jump into the code and see them in action inside FastAPI. You can see that I have opened my VS Code, and first of all I will initialize the project using UV and also add some dependencies like FastAPI and UVCon, which we will need during the coding. And we can see that some files have been automatically created. And first of all, let's start with imports. First of all, let's import fast API, which we want to learn. And I'll just make sure that the interpreter has been selected. And so I have decided that to learn about the methods like get, post, patch, and delete, I will make a Python dictionary which will contain some data like this is the dictionary users with the ten keys and values. Like it has a key as user ID, and all the other things are values of that user. And I will create some utility functions like get user, update user, delete user, and so on, and use that functions in the main.py file to create endpoints like get, post, put, path, and all. So first of all, let's start with get method. Okay. So first to get a user, we will need a function get user, and for that user id will be its input. And we can see that I have given a type hint as int to the user id, because here user ids are nothing but integers. And what I will do is I will just pass the user id and get the data. And we have to take care of one thing, like if there is no user with this user id, how to handle that situation. If there is no such data, then we will have to raise an exception. So from FastAPI I will import http exception and use that here. No user with such id. And so I will now return the data. Now in main.py I will import that from input that function from utils import get user. Okay, now we will make FastAPI app first of all. So to do that, it's very simple. We will just initialize the FastAPI, and first of all we will use the app.get. So this get is the http method get, and this app is the FastAPI app. So this decorator will help us get users, and I will make a function get user from id, and this will take user id as input. So what we will do is we will call this get user method. It takes user id as input. We will pass that as well. And when it returns, so this get user method returns us the details of the user. Like if we pass id1, then it will give us this all data. So we will take that data here in this user data variable. And so we will also return the output in this format. Setting this injection format data equals user data. So this is the case when we get the result without any exception. But in such situation where there is no data with such id, then HTTP exception will be raised. So what we need to do is we need to accept that exception as e and raise it as well. So now that we have created the get user API, it's the time to test it as well. And for that we will first of all run the FastAPI app using Rubycon. What other things we need? From app we will be from main we will be using app, and then host will be 127.0.0.1, which is the local host, and port we can give 1000, and reload equals true will help us reload the app when there are any changes. So let's run the main file now. Okay, we can see that Rubycon is running on this. Now in our web browser, the link has opened, and by simply entering /docs at the end of the link, we can access our Swagger docs that has been powered by FastAPI. And this is nothing but the same FastAPI endpoint, get user endpoint that we had created in our VS Code. And we can simply access it by clicking on try it out and by entering our user ID. Suppose if I enter user ID 1 and then click on execute, I will get the status code 200 and a response body which adds success equals to true and the data of the user. Similarly, we can also enter other user ID and check it and get the data. But in case we enter such user ID which does not exist, we will get 404 because we had raised an HTTP exception with the status code 404, and in the detail part we had passed no user with such ID, so we got this response. Now we are done with get request. Now we will move to post request. Now for post request, we will need similar function, and I have already written the code for the post user method, and I have done nothing like rocket science and all. I have just created a function which takes inputs like user ID, name, email, and phone number, and if the user ID already exists in this users, then it will raise an exception, HTTP exception with the status code 400, and the detail will include user with such ID already exist. And if the user ID does not exist, then it will create that user with that ID and the name, email, and phone number that has been supplied in this method and return the whole user's variable. And in our main file we will create the API for that. Now we will need same inputs like user ID, name, email, and phone number to create a new user. So I will use the same inputs. And after we have taken all the inputs, now it's turn to first of all, I will have to import the method. So I have also created the post method where we will enter all the details like user ID, name, email, phone number, and then if no exception arises, we will return success true and the user data. But if exception arises, we will raise that exception. Okay, now see let's reload this page, and we can see that this is the new API that we had just created. And to enter a new user to our email, suppose if the user ID already exists, what will happen? New user gmail.com, and phone number can be anything like 9812345678. Execute. Then we got an exception that user with ID 1 already exists. So we will have to provide a user ID that does not exist. For example, 11 does not exist, so we can do that. And here we have got the 200 status code, that is success code, and success is true, and in the data new user has been Inserted, that is new user has been added to our system. So now we if we pass user id 11 to our get user api, then we can get that data also. Now that we have already created apis for get user and push user, now we will also make such APIs for patch and delete for the users. And I have already done code for patch user and delete user. These are very similar to previous ones. In patch method, we can update a single one, like one, two, or more parameters as well. If we don't want to update the whole parameters of the user, like if you don't want to update whole details, name, email, phone number, everything, but just want to update any one or two details, then we can use this method. And in delete method, we can pass the user id, and if the user id does not exist, then the exception will be raised. But if the user id exists, the user id, all the details of the user will be deleted from the user's variable, and the user's data will be returned. So now we will first work for patch user, and then also work for delete user. let's let's make the api app.patch, and then we can write update user here. So I think you have noticed that um, I have written this string or non and equals to non for name, email, and phone number, but only integer for user ID. This is because I want the user ID to be essential, to be required field, but name, email, and phone number are optional. They can just provide the value of the field that needs to be updated. Like if only name needs to be updated, only the name value can be provided, and if no value has been provided, then automatically none will be set for these three fields. So let's get started. First of all, I will use a try. I will use that pass user method and pass the user id and also other details. And similarly we will also make the delete api. So I just noticed that rob has given me a error, that is redefinition of unused delete user. So I can rename it, because the delete user, we already had a function named delete user. It is giving me that message that you have two delete user messages. So I will rename it as delete user from ID. And I think now we are good to go. We will now test our four APIs for get, post, patch, and delete. First of all, let's see what we have in get user. So if we see for user ID 1, we have name garima@gmail.com, and there is a phone number. So suppose I want to change the email address of Garima and set it to garima1 example.com. Then what will I do? I will use my patch request, pass the user ID, and set my email address to garima1@gmail.com and leave others as empty because these are optional fields. And when I execute, I got the success message, that is 200 status code, and we can see that the email of the Garima has been set to garima1@gmail.com. And now if I want to delete the user Garima, what will I do? I will just use the delete user API and pass the user ID here, and we can see that there is no user named Garima here because we had deleted it. So this was all about the patch and delete API. Now I think one API has remained, that is put request. We will work on that now. For the put request, I have made the put user method ready and have just pasted it here. So what happens is, first of all, it will search for the user ID in users. If the user ID does not exist, then HTTP exception will be raised, which will say that user with this ID not found. But if the user exists, then the name, email, and phone number will be updated for that user. And I didn't want to read in this message. I just want to return the user's data. And in the API, we will perform the similar. We are done with making the APIs. Now it's the time for testing them. So I will reload the space again, and this is the put request that we were preparing for. And if I enter the user ID, so we have this data of user, and let's change the details for this second user Arab. Okay, so for the user ID 2, we will change the name to Arohi, and email would be arohi@example.com, and phone number would be 9. Okay, let's execute this, and we can see that the detail of the second user has been changed. So we are done with uh, all the APIs for get user, then post method for adding the user, patch request for updating the user, delete method for deleting the user, and put method for updating the user details. Now, if you have any suggestions for me or if you have questions to ask me, you can gently make a comment in the comment section. I will make sure to address it. So, thanks for watching. We will meet in the next video.